Chapter 41, The Cold War. The Cold War wasn't fought on a battlefield. It was a war of ideologies between Western democracy and Eastern communist countries over a question of communism. The warring countries had many different ideas about politics and economics. On one side were communists and the other side were capitalists. Communist countries in Eastern Europe were isolated from the West behind what Eastern Church called the Iron Curtain in 1946. Germany occupation zones. Berlin, USSR, UK, US, France, USSR, France, UK, US, Berlin. The division of Germany. After World War II, the Allied power divided Germany into four zones, each occupied by one of the major powers, Great Britain, France, the US, and the Soviet Union. Great Britain, France, and the US wanted to unify their western section into a West German state, but the Soviets disagreed. In June 1948, the Soviets set up the Berlin blockade, preventing truck, train, and barge, the deal for food and supplies, from the getting into the three western zones of Berlin. The Western Allies used the Berlin airlift to deliver supplies to West Berlin by plane. 10 months later, the Soviets finally ended their blockade. The blocking of something can also be used as a verb. In 1949, the flight formally created West Germany or the Federal Republic of Germany. Less than a month later, the Soviets set up an Eastern German state called the German Democratic Republic. The capital, Berlin, was divided into East Berlin under Soviet rule and West Berlin with a democratic government. Berlin became a major Cold War source of conflict. West Berlin was much poorer than the West Berlin. The many Western Berliners escaped and took refuge in West Berlin. To stop this, in 1961, Soviet Premier leader Nikita Khrushchev built a wall dividing the city. The Berlin Wall came to symbolize the division and disagreement between communist and democratic superpowers. O2, attention, seatbelt sign, gente, West Berlin. In October 1989, mass demonstration forced the communist government to open its border. On November 9, 1989, the Berlin Wall was torn down, signaling the end of Soviet-style communism. Germany's unification took place a year later. China, Beijing. Communism in China. In China, communism thrived in 1945. There had been two Chinese governments, the nationalists in southern China and the communists in northern China. Civil war between the two sides ended in victory for communist rule under Mao Zedong. The People's Republic of China was formed in 1949 and Mao Zedong became its first chairman. In 1958, Chairman Mao began the new program called the Great Leap Forward, which combined small farms into vast communes with more than 30,000 people living and working together. Commune, a community of people who live together and share work and finance. Mao promised more equal rights distribution. Commune fostered communal child care so women could work the field alongside their husband. 처음엔 Mao hoped life in the commune would allow China to have a classless society, but the Great Leap Forward was a great big failure and caused one of the world's worst famine. By 1960, the government abandoned the program. In the late 1970s, Communist Party of China leader Deng Xiaoping tried to move China toward a market economy under the communist political system in a set of reform called four modernizations. The four modernizations in agriculture, industry, national defense, and science and technology were intended to make China a major economic power. China's economy improved in the 1980s when the country finally opened its door to outside investment from countries like the US. When people went abroad and learned more about the West, some began to criticize the Communist Party and call for democracy, and were often put in prison as a punishment for speaking up. In May 1989, student protesters demanded the end of corruption. They wanted the Communist Party leaders to resign. In June, the protests set up Tiananmen Square in Beijing. Deng Xiaoping said tanks and troops between 500 and 2,000 people were killed. Even though China experienced political conflict, the country have developed into one of the strongest economies in the world in the last several decades. Korea and Vietnam. In Korea and Vietnam, there were divisions between communist and non-communist government that worsened into military confrontation. Before World War II, Korea had been Japanese colony. The US proposed dividing Japanese occupied Korea near the 38th parallel. The Soviet helped the communists take power in North Korea, and the US supported the democratic government in South Korea. In June 1950, North Korea communist forces attacked South Korea. The United Nations put together a team of soldiers led by the US General Douglas MacArthur, who has helped to take Japan in World War II and have overseen its occupation to help South Korea. When MacArthur tried to push the invaders out of South Korea, China sent troops to help their allies in North Korea. Eventually, the two sides agreed to disagree. They signed the armistice in July 1953, agreeing to stop fighting and keep the country divided. South Korea, North Korea, Pyongyang. Armistice line, 38th parallel. MacArthur made an unlikely ambitious invasion at Incheon, which turned the tide of war. France had once colonized Vietnam as part of the Indonesia, present-day Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. French involvement in Indonesia continued after World War II until 1954. When a Vietnam independence movement led by Ho Chi Minh defeated the French and the Battle of Dien Bien Phu, like Korea, Vietnam had divided into a communist north and a non-communist south. In South Vietnam, communist rebel called Viet Cong tried to unite the entire country until communist rule. Once more, the U.S. got involved, sending economic aid as well as military troops. The U.S. was afraid of seeing the domino effect. It believed that if the communists won South Vietnam, other Asian countries would also fall to communism, like dominoes. The Vietnam War lasted 4 years, killing thousands of Americans and Vietnamese. North Vietnam, Hanoi, demilitarized zone. South Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh City, formerly Saigon, Cambodia, and Laos. The US launched an aggressive bombing campaign against North Vietnam called Operation Rolling Thunder, plus chemical warfare in which it sprayed herbicide Agent Orange to destroy Vietnamese jungle to clear territory for soldiers and crops. In spite of all its military power, superior equipment, and large number of troops, the US failed to defeat the North Vietnamese. Ho Chi Minh and the North Vietnamese waged guerrilla warfare. They would attack before running and hiding in the jungle, and they built underground tunnels. Anti-war movement in the US protested and called for an end of war, especially after American troops killed Vietnamese civilians in the My Lai massacre in 1968 and entered another country, Cambodia, in 1970 to back up airstrikes. In 1973, the US withdrew the troops from South Vietnam. Fighting continued between the North and the South until Communist forces captured the capital of South Vietnam, Saigon, and renamed Ho Chi Minh City. In 1976, they united Vietnam under Communist rule, the arms race, and the Cuban Missile Crisis. Throughout this time, the US and Soviet Union built up their armies and efforts just in case they had to go to war against each other. This build-up was known as the arms race. No battle were fought between the two countries during the Cold War, but the arms race led to advancement in airplane, jet, tanks, and other weapon systems. Nuclear weapons became increasingly dangerous as each side tried to outdo the other with deadlier and deadlier bombs until each nation had more than enough bombs to destroy each other several times over. In Cuba, Communist leader Fidel Castro led a revolution of workers and peasants against the right-wing dictatorship of Fulgencio Batista. Castro wanted to provide education, health care, and national land right to the lower class. The Batista re-elected in Cuba. Many of the sugar plantations were owned by foreigners. The US didn't like having communism so close to home. So, in April 1961, President John F. Kennedy, as known as JFK, supported an invasion of Cuba by exiled Cuban fighters to overthrow Castro. By Bay of Pigs, Havana, Cuba, Atlantic Ocean, Miami, Florida, 230 miles, 370 kilometers. The Bay of Pigs invasion was a failure and ended in the surrender of the exiled fighters. Castro remained in power, imposing communist rule in the country, and he turned to the Soviet for support. A year after the Bay of Pigs invasion, the US discovered Soviet missiles in Cuba, which could have ended up in a nuclear weapon conflict. Luckily, the Soviets agreed to withdraw their missiles after the US blockaded their fleet in Cuban Missile Crisis of October 1962. Still, the fear of nuclear weapons being used was suddenly very realistic. Newly independent countries that made up the former Soviet Union, Russia, the Cold War ends. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, 에스토니아, 리투아니아, 라트비아, 리투아니아, 벨라루스, 우크라이나, 몰도바, 조지, 아르메니아, 아제르바이잔, 카자흐스탄, 키르기스탄, 우즈베키스탄, 타키스탄, 터크메니스탄. 탄탄탄탄. The Cold War ends. The Cold War ended in the early 1990s, thanks in part of the reform introduced by Mikhail Gorbachev. who became the leader of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union in 1985. Gorbachev called for a radical reconstruction of the Soviet Union economy and political system called Petroskia. He also supported glasnost, a policy of perestroika that encouraged Soviet citizens to speak openly about the Soviet Union's strengths and weaknesses, which led to Soviet republics demanding independence and the defeat of the Communist Party. In 1978, the Soviet and the American agreed to eliminate the intermediate-range nuclear weapons. The Soviet Union dissolved in 1991. The arms race between the USSR and the US and the Cold War was over at last.